Declaring any year the best when it comes to anime is bold and stupid. Anime is constantly coming out. There's like 50 new shows each quarter, and it is far-fetched to say that any given season will be completely terrible, and even more impossible that every show will be great. What I am trying to say is the fact that new stuff pops up constantly means that it is only a matter of time until an even better slate inevitably comes to being. At least in principle. Huh? If you've been around as long as I have, you start to look back and wonder, has anime peaked? As a self-proclaimed optimist, I want to say no. I mean, some of my new favourites have come out over the past few years. But there was a year that crowned an abnormally large number of quintessential titles. Anime that I will go out of my way to rewatch and then rewatch again. 2016. Of course, you're probably thinking this is blatant nostalgia. Okay, yes, but this year had an abundance of critically acclaimed shows and movies too. Funny enough, a lot of them are actually forgotten about in the anime fan public memory because of what I said before. A new wave drops every quarter, and space in our brains is in tight competition. That makes it more important to look back. For old heads, it's a chance to reminisce, and for newcomers, you might just discover a new thing to fall in love with. So let's journey back to 2016, 9 years ago, damn, and explore whether it truly was anime's best year. 佐藤和馬さん、ようこそ死後の世界へ。Straight off the bat, 2016 was already popping off in the winter season. A blessing on our then wonderful world came to be, that being Konosuba. An isekai, not the last time I'll be saying that today, this colourful series saw protagonist Kazuma dying and then being whisked off to another world to go on comedic MMORPG style adventures. He proceeds to mingle with a cast of lovable idiots, a quartet that might just be one of anime's most iconic. It was the little things that came together perfectly with this show. The characters were genuinely wonderful, with each viewer having a favourite because they were so distinctly different and represented the extreme end of their respective archetypes. Place them together and you get the signature craziness of Konosuba, and that's before you bring the extended character roster into it. Despite being an isekai, the world was never really the appeal of the show, although that's not to say they didn't have fun with the different landscapes and creatures that inhabited it. Let's face it, Konosuba's success was because of Megumin, Aqua, Darkness, and Kazuma. This crew was just too good. It felt like the best possible party you could have for a fun time in a fantastical world. Meanwhile, this season featured another isekai that took a completely different approach. One that, back in 2016, reeled me in with my first video to top 100k views. Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash. This anime generated significant interest at the time, primarily because it took a familiar setup that's typically treated absurdly and instead approached it with genuine seriousness. Grimgar highlighted the very real challenges of being suddenly dropped in a fantasy realm and the struggles you would have to just survive. Like, holy shit, there's a goblin in front of me. I don't want to die. How do I not die? This was vastly different to most isekais, which either focused on larger-than-life comedy or action. Grimgar was a more human interpretation. It had a lot of fan service though, that didn't change. This is a great example of a show that's basically forgotten. No second season followed it, despite it ticking so many boxes. The watercolour backgrounds had me in awe the whole time, and the soundtrack matched the vibe as well. It's a shame we never got more of it, to be honest. But there was one anime that dominated this season, Erased. If you were part of the anime community, you simply couldn't escape conversations about it, largely due to its dark, gripping premise. This time it wasn't an isekai, but instead the lead character Satoru possessing an uncontrolled ability to get sent back and briefly forward in time, giving him the opportunity to prevent certain deaths. A particularly large leap occurs when his mother is killed, sending him back 18 years. An opportunity to try and stop not only this from happening, but a serial killer who ripped apart his youth. You are left with a situation where the lead has to piece things together slowly, which naturally extends to the viewer, making the start of the series highly engaging. It had some really interesting visual cues. I particularly enjoyed the contrast of singling out red and leaving it in during black and white scenes. But unfortunately, as it progressed, it supposedly made some bizarre deviations from its source material, and while I cannot comment on that, I do remember it getting more convoluted later on for sure. Besides these big three shows, Winter also had other niche offerings, and an abundance of second seasons, but I mainly want to talk about anime that got their start this year, so I'll move on.
お目覚めですか?
Jumping into spring, this is where the title of this video really starts to hold some weight. I'll start with Kizunaiva, which I'll admit I remember it for its visual style more than anything else. This was a colourful trigger anime that had a unique premise, set in an experimental city that used an initiative called the Kizuna system. This attempted to bring people together by connecting their pain in both an emotional and physical sense. Personally, I quite enjoyed Kizunaiva. I am the kind of guy who gets excited by aesthetic uses of low light and weird camera shots, which it had in abundance. Beyond that, I think it was solid, but could have gone further with exploring its fundamental ideas. Also, some of the characters outshined others massively, to the point where I only remembered them when compiling this video. Next up, JoJo Part 4. You know, there was a point in time when I didn't really think all of this was for me. That turned out to be a very bad assumption, because as soon as I started watching JoJo, I couldn't stop. Furthermore, it just kept getting better, and Part 4 is arguably the animated pinnacle. It was the best at everything the series is beloved for. When asked what makes JoJo great, the single words used are often funny or wacky, but Part 4 had genuinely great writing and pacing, and I would say that was its hook. Now, this spring season also saw the birth of my favourite isekai anime, Re:Zero. It starts as any other pure-blooded isekai would, with the protagonist Subaru, who happens to be a recluse, waking up in the kingdom of Lugunica. Various things happen quite quickly, but the way the world is established through Subaru's perspective makes it very engaging from the start. He immediately experiences the vast scale of power in this world and the differences from the reality he is used to. Emilia is a great companion for all of this, and it is very easy to see from this point why Subaru wants to help and grow closer to her. She is the best half-elf to ever exist, after all. While Subaru might be initially weak, he is never useless. Central to this is Subaru's ability, aptly named Return by Death, which allows him to return to a prior point in time after dying, which happens a lot. I could put together an entire video on what makes Re:Zero so exceptional, but to summarise, it is a series that has a diverse range of well-developed characters. Some are powerful allies, some are comical evil villains, some are highly intelligent, and others are insane, but all are well-designed and often have more to them than meets the eye. It is the interaction Subaru has with them that pushes him to mature as a human and grow forth from his individual flaws. It's definitely not an easy ride, but that makes the payoff far greater. Few shows keep their audience as long and as engaged as Re:Zero has, and I will always recommend it. So I've mentioned 3 shows, but there was also the popcorn flick Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, a comfy supernatural slice of life show about a flying witch called Flying Witch, even High School Fleet, also a very literal name given it was about anime girls setting sail in fucking battleships. These were not the big guns of spring 2016, well, mostly, but I think in the current anime climate, any of them could be top shows in a given lineup. Actually, this was also the season that launched Bungo Stray Dogs and My Hero Academia, which I will not claim I am a fan of, but their impact was immense. There was even a short anime that captured attention, Space Patrol Luluko. This was just Trigger having so much fun, and that transferred onto the viewer with ease.
Mitsuha.
Summer quickly came barreling in, and my god, the good anime just didn't stop. But before I talk about the TV stuff, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice not to mention 2 of the biggest and deservingly praised films that were released around this time. Firstly, there was Makoto Shinkai's Your Name, which still stands as one of the most beautifully looking works of art in the medium. I think a big part of that comes from the constant switching between countryside and metropolis, a duality that sets the stage for Mitsuha and Taki as they grapple with switching bodies and understanding how exactly they are connected. The level of detail and life in every shot was unprecedented, and the film established Shinkai as a director that was on pretty much everyone's eye. So much of the framework for his next two films originated here, from visuals to sound, but more importantly, a cinematic scale that is extremely rare in anime. Then there was also Koi no Katachi. This is a film that's special to a lot of people because every minute is crafted with care for the delicate nature of the story it portrays. Following two main characters who cross under very different circumstances, it uses the vessel of time, changes in environment, and human maturity to show how it all tunes ourselves and relationships. Directed by Naoki Yamada, somebody who understands the intricacies of how people interact, it is a masterpiece. What it is tackling is something difficult, something multifaceted, but something that is part of our experience of being human. I could never do it justice in a video like this, but I will say it is something that needs to be seen. Going back to TV, we had Mob Psycho 100, which found its success through being so much more than your typical shonen in every way. The way it used animation was fluid and expressive, giving it almost a beating heart to explore themes that are seldom explored in this genre. Something that personally meant a lot to me was Love Live Sunshine. I know idol anime isn't everyone's cup of tea, but, and I know I've said this before, it is so much more than some girls singing and dancing on stage. It is about what unity as a collective can do for the individual, and some of the backstories and the triumphs that follow from this are delightful. It does have silly fun, but it can be surprisingly touching too. It takes place in a seaside town, which I am also a sucker for. Isn't the endless vast body of water perfect for self-reflection? But the show that stole the limelight and became my favourite of all time, even to this day, is New Game. It is a wonderful representee of anime, and yet not in every way that matters. It swaps school for the workplace, as new hire Shizukaze Aoba navigates her new job in a game development company. So many anime are about personal development. After all, it is a key component of any story, but few take you through the life course of that as well as New Game. It covers learning, conflict, triumph, failure in a heightened way because it is between a core cast that are all in the same building most of the time. But more so than that, the real-life people that worked on the show loved every moment they worked on it. Anime is ultimately a product of what an expansive team puts into it. The more you care about it, the better it will be. From the voice actors, from the animators, from the collective that made it. Which, when you think about it, that's kind of the essence of the show. Okay, before moving on to the finale of Fall, I need to give mention to the series Orange and Real Life. Both are examples of anime that tried doing things differently to what is standard for the type of show they were. Orange was a mellow school drama that used a zest of science fiction to really bring it all together. Real Life basically does the whole 17 again thing, but in a way that kind of really hits home for the adults watching. As 2016 was rounding up, I will say this was probably the weakest part of the year's lineup, at least for me. Unfortunately, I just haven't seen most of the stuff that I know was generally considered worth watching at the time. But if you were into ecchi, you had Keijo, which was at least very unique. I don't know about you, but I do quite like it when an anime creates a sport that is very impractical in real life, but absolutely works in the bizarre world of animation, like Girls in Panzer and Keijo, I guess. Yuri on Ice was something that felt pretty substantial at the time, and the few clips of it that I have seen over the years definitely suggest it is very capable of grabbing your attention and dazzling in the moment. Then there was Sangatsu no Lion, which I know has a passionate fan base, and honestly it looks like something I would enjoy, so I'm not entirely sure why I haven't watched it. But something that I did check out and remember faintly but fondly was Flip Flappers. It was a surreal experience that used a bizarre alternate dimension with unique creatures and fauna, kind of like Alice in Wonderland in its style, but with a pop of anime. You know, as someone declaring 2016 the best year for anime, I sure lost steam towards the end. Right now, you very well might be thinking there's been better years in anime than this. Let's be honest, it's a title that could never really be objectively verified, and to be honest, carries very little value in discussion because every anime should be treated as its own thing. At the same time though, from within me, I do believe 2016 was special. Regardless of what you liked, there were anime across all genres to satiate your tastes. More than that though, it was the starting point of many series that still have dedicated fan bases to this day, but that can be said about other years too. So the reason why 2016 stood out to me definitely has some external factors at play. AnimeRuss was doing well at the time. In fact, if you look back at the videos on this channel, you'll notice I covered a few of the shows I talked about today, but it wasn't that. It was more so a wider feeling that was in the air for anime fans. It felt like the medium was in a transformative period in 2016. At the time, it was exciting to watch this hobby that I loved grow, and it was doing so exceptionally fast. There were anime that reached new heights of success, and most of that came from the quality of what was being put out. 2016 as a year of anime was special not because of what it contained per se, but the opportunity it presented. It was the exponential phase of anime's wider acceptance as an entertainment and art form. Not everything that came from that was good, especially on the business side, but overall it is hard to not look back and say, you know, 2016 was a great time. The anime was phenomenal, and so was the feeling of being a part of it. I've been Russ, and have a great night. Or day.